Morning, everyone. We'll start the meeting. Welcome to the Regional Development Assessment Panel meeting this morning. I declare the meeting open at 9:31, and in doing so acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people, Noongar Nation, joined by people from other lands around the state. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2025 under the Planning and Development of Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development of Assessment Panels Regulations 2011. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. My name's Clayton Hire. I'm the presiding member for today's meeting, and with me I have Dale Page, the deputy presiding member, and Karen Hyde, the third specialist member, and online we've got Commissioner Jessica Shaw and Commissioner Ronald Urovich from the town of Port Hedland. Welcome to you both. Yeah. There are no apologies, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving to part B of the agenda, I'm seeking a confirmation by show of hands that all panel members have duly considered the documentation contained within part B and the part B related information. Could you show of hand, please? Thank you very much. Also note the R13 direction response was published on the 22nd of October 2025. Are there any disclosures of interest? I presume this matter didn't go to a council meeting, commissioners?
No, it hasn't. Not one that we've sat on.
Yes, okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. I just need to disclose that I was in attendance at the State Administrative Tribunal mediation in accordance with section 2.4.6 of the DAP Code of Conduct 2025. I declare that I participated in the State Administrative Tribunal process in relation to the application at item 5.1. However, under section 2.1.3 of the DAP Code of Conduct 2025, I acknowledge that I'm not bound by any confidential discussions that occurred as part of the mediation process and undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to the DAP application before me, which will be considered on its planning merits. Thank you. There are no Form 1 applications at item 3. There are no Form 2 applications at item 4. Item 5 is the SAT reconsideration. So we have a number of presenters, and I just remind you that presentations are limited to 3 minutes. However, I have given Nada Rafael from Minter Allison has been granted 6 minutes because she's speaking on behalf of another person from, which is Joel Garrett from Minter Allison, who is not sick at the moment. I'd ask presenters to keep to 3 minutes and try and focus on the key points as we have read the material before us. So I go to the first presenter, Owen Hightower. You have 3 minutes, Owen.
Thanks, DAP members and Hedland commissioners. Speaking again on this matter, seeking that DAP uphold its original decision to refuse the development, and I'll try and be quicker this time. The project isn't insignificant. This is a really substantial development that would have a massive impact on the future of Port Hedland and the community of South Hedland in particular if it was approved. And I think it's just really important that we consider that when exercising discretion here by all the DAP members. Quickly on the land use permissibility, the applicant talks about the 30-minute rule kind of not applying. We disagree. McLeod's advice originally to the DAP didn't even discuss this in considering whether discretion applied. We note the application still talks about the convenience store, which being open to the public. This to us is a shop, and that's an ex-use that would not be permitted in the rural zone. In making the decision originally, the DAP members spoke very clearly about their expectations on what should be provided back to the DAP if it was to consider it again, particularly in relation to the supporting technical documentation. We feel that plainly the additional technical information that's provided with this report doesn't meet that standard that was very clearly set by the DAP, and we've gone to some length to outline that in our submission. I would just note in relation to our submission on the Watercorp letter, whilst Watercorp's nuanced their advice somewhat, they very clearly say on their own website that there is unavailable capacity for unplanned developments within the Port Hedland water supply network, and this project to us quite clearly fits the bill of an unplanned development within their broader strategic planning. The flood mapping attached refers to a 2010 one in 100 year flood advice. It doesn't consider climate impacts that may affect this and which we know will affect it, and it doesn't also include 1 in 500 year advice. All that information regarding that is publicly available and should have been considered by the applicants in putting this forward. Other one, just quickly on the DRP, the advice is suggested that it's from the DRP, it's from the chairperson of the DRP. That advice wasn't produced in accordance with the town's DRP policy, and it should only be considered in the context that it is advice from a member of the DRP, not from the DRP itself. And finally, to get to the fundamental point, in our view, that this is about whether you should exercise discretion in relation to clause 34.4b and 34.5 of LPS 7. It's up to the applicant to provide compelling evidence that this project will not have no impact, but will not have any significant, might not have an impact, but absolutely will not have a significant impact on the amenity of the locality and the community. Plainly, there is not any evidence to demonstrate that compelling evidence, and it really shouldn't be on us to prove the opposite. The applicant's own SIA determines the cumulative impacts of the project will be negative. There's been a real lack of consideration of climate resilience in this project.
That's 3 minutes. Thanks, Owen.
No worries. Thanks.
What if you just want to wind up?
Okay, sorry. Yeah, the idea that the ground floor is to be used as an evacuation centre when there hasn't even been considered of a 1 in 100 flood level, and that the town's own evacuation centre standards set a minimum threshold of 1 in 500 year event to have their ground floor set up, really could put significant stress on the town's broader evacuation centre. No consideration to post-development flows on surrounding land and existing development.
I think you just need to wind up now. Thanks, Owen.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Okay. I've covered things mostly. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Are there questions of the presenter from panel members?
None from you.
No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Owen. We'll move on to Nada Raphael from Minter Ellison. You have 6 minutes.
Good morning, presiding member and panel members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nada Raphael, the legal representative for the applicant. Joining me today is Marissa Fayer, representing Pacific Partnerships, Andrew Campion, the designer for the project, and online we also have Paul Huntles from Irby, the traffic engineer. By way of background, in July 2024, Pacific lodged a development application for a workforce accommodation village and a tourist development, together with ancillary facilities in South Hedland. The plans were subsequently amended by the applicant in October, and the proposal was refused by the panel in November last year. For the panel's reconsideration, the applicant has prepared a revised design, updated various technical reports, and addressed each of the reasons for refusal in the planning report that it has prepared. In effect, the amended proposal reduces the number of accommodation rooms to the same number in the original development application, with a slightly different configuration to allow for an improved design. Significant efforts have been made to revise the design, and the applicant is pleased to advise that it has the full support of the chair of the DRP, having previously been considered by the full DRP in accordance with the town's policy. Behind those revisions is a substantially improved but not substantially changed proposal. The proposal will provide a total of 1,311 rooms, with 1,268 rooms allocated to workforce accommodation to support workers in the resource sector and other industries, and 24 rooms allocated to tourist accommodation. And you can see that here in this slide with the master plan, the tourist accommodation in buildings B and building C being the ground floor of those buildings, with access through the reception and comprising street-facing courtyards. There are a total of 388 rooms in those street-facing buildings, and 364 of those rooms will be allocated to workforce accommodation. There are 58 rooms of the workforce accommodation that were previously in that street-facing building that have been moved to above the Central Facilities building, which is CFC. There are then 792 rooms in those 33 buildings there, which are 22 stories that you can see. And there are 63 rooms in the two buildings, which are 3 stories to the left-hand side of the screen. And they are for the managers and the staff of the workforce accommodation village. In essence, it is the same development, being an accommodation village. However, the amended design provides greater clarity on the intended use of the accommodation rooms that interface the street. There will also be on-site facilities for the workers. So the revised proposal makes it clear that access to the wet mess and the dry mess and the gym are limited to the workers. These areas weren't intended to be separate uses. And the guests that are staying in the tourist development rooms will have access to the convenience store, which will have some ready-made meals and end-of-trip facilities, and those areas will be accessed via an restricted access card, so there won't be public access to those areas. The revised proposal also removes the retail component, which now forms part of the floor space of the business centre, and the cafe has been replaced with a small convenience store for workers and for guests. So the site is vacant Crown land, it's zoned rural under the town scheme. It's strategically located, as you can see on the screen, on the western urban fringe of South Hedland. It's southwest of the FMG facility, known as Club Hamilton, and it's immediately west to another workforce accommodation village, which is ESS Gateway Village at the end of Corolla Court. It's also positioned adjacent to the proposed South Hedland Sports Hub to the north of the site. Now, it's anticipated that the proposal will operate for an initial term of 23 years, followed by a further 20 years under a sublease from the town. And the design of the proposal supports a transition to an alternative land use or being removed at the end of the sublease. Under the planning framework, the uses of workforce accommodation and tourist development are permissible in the rural zone at the discretion of the panel. The proposal is not located on rural land that is within a 30-minute drive outside the town site boundary. This is a proposal that's located inside the town site boundary. And the town's workforce accommodation position statement makes it clear and encourages workforce accommodation to be located within the town site boundary. And that's to ensure that these developments realise immediate and sustainable value for the community and to maximise psychosocial outcomes for workforce. With all due respect to Mr Hightower, we consider that he has misapplied the scheme and the policy. When read as a whole, the town's policy encourages the provision of workforce accommodation in very close proximity to urban areas, and this is precisely where the development is. It's located on a site that's close to the existing urban area, being on the western fringe of South Hedland. In our view, clause 34 of the scheme does not apply because the development is not located on rural land within a 30-minute drive outside of the town site boundary.
6 minutes.
Yeah. And the town, we say, has applied this policy in the same way as the applicant, as is evident in the RAR, and there is no non-compliance with clause 32. If the panel does form the view that it does, clause 32 does apply, then we say that the the panel has the power to exercise its discretion and approve the development under clause 34. The development is appropriate when considered against the deemed provisions, clause 67 of the deemed provisions, and for the reasons that are provided in the applicant's planning report. It's not expected that this location will have any significant adverse effects on the occupiers of this village, the inhabitants of the location. And we say that the objectives of the workforce accommodation policy has been complied with. I'll just end on two notes. One is that we don't consider that Mr. Hightower's arguments have any merit. And in relation to conditions, there is one change that's requested to condition 10N, which currently provides that the occupational health and safety plan is subject to satisfaction. And the applicant just requests that the words in those brackets is amended to in accordance with these guidelines. Otherwise, we respectfully request that the panel approve this development.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to questions after, I think, the other two presentations. So we'll move to the next, Marissa.
Thank you. Good morning. And on behalf of Pacific Partnerships, I'm delighted to submit this proposal for reconsideration. Since the previous meeting, we have undertaken considerable work to deliver a high-quality workforce accommodation village in South Hedland. I'll make 3 points, if I could. Firstly, there is an economic demand for this accommodation. This scale is a direct response to the growing operation needs of the mining, energy and construction sector, as well as increasing demand for the short-term accommodation in the region. Port Hedland is expected to face an accommodation shortage for workers by 2028 and 2030. Pacific is committed to deliver a benchmark quality development that meets these needs while supporting the region economic growth. My second point is that operation management plan will be prepared to demand on the principles in the planning report. Some key points are shown in this slide. Sorry, it's a bit of a busy slide. The car parking rates is aligned with the operation model. The site also provides for 60 bicycle spaces, supporting active transport to South Hedland. This will allow residents in the accommodation to move into the town centre without needing vehicles to be utilised and really taking on an integration into the community. As Nada has indicated, strict security and control access will be prevented through an access card entry. Workers in the workforce accommodation rooms will receive an access card for entry to the dining, recreation, wellness and business facilities. A separate online booking system will be used for the tourist development bookings. Guests will receive stay details and restricted access cards at the check-in point and can only enter the convenience store and end-of-trip facility. A paramedic or nurse, assisted by first aiders, will be on site to handle non-critical medical needs during our 20 or 23 years of operation. A disaster management sub-plan will be prepared as part of our operation management plan. This will include monitoring for cyclones and other disasters, evacuation procedures prior to cyclone events, or in an emergency that requires rapid response. This will also be there will be designated areas within the property for refuge during these events. Community benefits. This is my third point and one that I hold very dear to my heart as we do this very often in our developments. We try to deliver positive social outcomes for projects in the regions that we operate in. This benefits is through activation of landscaping.
So that's 3 minutes, if you could.
Thank you. The Parola precincts, economic benefits during construction and operations through local procurement and recruitment of local staff, and the provision of voluntary financial contribution to the town for community infrastructure. There's one more, and I'll be very quick on this. We're proud that our proposal on its own merit is not expected to result in any negative social effects on the area. This has been assessed through working closely with creative communities throughout the preparation of our social impact management plan. I know I'm 3 minutes.
You need to wind up. Thank you.
Wind up, okay.
It's well over 3. It's nearly 4 minutes.
No worries. I will just say one thing about in relation to heavy vehicle parking that was actually raised by Mr. Hightower. Urban has confirmed only minimal curve or line marking changes may be required, which is not affecting traffic flow or safety. This can be resolved during the detailed design in compliance with condition 12. So,
Okay.
thank you so much.
On to Andrew. Andrew, 3 minutes. Andrew.
Good morning, presiding member and panel members. My name is Andrew Campion, the designer of this proposal. I'll now give an overview of the improvements made to the proposal design since last November. Over the last year, we've worked to refine and elevate the proposed design. Our aim has always been to deliver accommodation that not only meets the needs of Port Hedland, but also sets a new benchmark for urban quality for this topology and of accommodation in Port Hedland. The revised proposal responds directly to feedback from DAP and the RDAP with significant improvements across all 10 design principles of the SPP7, which I'll now step through. 1, context and character. Firstly, we strengthened the relationship between the proposal and its surroundings. The planned Shish precinct naturally encourages the proposal to address the streetscape interface along all lengths of the Parola Court frontage, which we've provided, together with a well-developed landscape buffer to Parola Court to nestle the vehicle drop-off zones. Landscaping. Landscaping has been a large focus of our improvement. The new landscaping plan ties together the site's layout and introduces a diverse planting palette. We've provided generous tree planting along all major pedestrian routes, semi-mature specimens, and minimised turf use to contribute to sustainability and comfort. We've integrated stormwater management into the landscaping design, and again, the landscaping along Parola Court verge has been increased considerably to enhance the streetscape. Built form and scale. We've carefully reconsidered the massing of the buildings and in places the height of the street-facing buildings. The overall built form now maximises outlook to the recreational area, and we've orientated buildings in a logical and efficient manner. Along the Parola Court frontage, we've articulated the larger buildings built form by introducing recesses, step downs, and built form in other places, not only breaking up the monolithic appearance from the previous design, but allowing us to introduce courtyard spaces and on-structure planting. This new on-structure planting and internal courtyards further softens the building form and provides additional streetscape activation, and we expect the occupants to really enjoy those high-quality communal spaces to break out into. These new elements break up the built form, providing visual interest, improved cross-ventilation, and enhance the overall living experience for the occupants. We've also provided a benchmark treatment to the 2-storey modular units, as these are all contained outdoor living spaces, strong passive environment design quality.
3 minutes. Thanks, Andrew. Can you wind up, please?
The master plan, it's logical and efficient and active planes. Sustainability, we engaged with an ESD consultant to provide a comprehensive sustainable report. Amenity, all of the accommodations in the back part have balconies, sky gardens, rooftops, courtyards that people can access on all floor levels. Perhaps if I can just finish with the aesthetics. Finally, there's a far higher standard than a typical seen for comparable developments and a clear improvement from previous designs. The new building designs avoids typical modular aesthetics and breaks up the larger buildings using colour, window hoods, courtyards and sky gardens. I respectfully ask the panel to support this exciting proposal, as it is much needed benchmark workforce accommodation for Port Hedland, and one that we are very proud to have received the full support of the DRP Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, questions of the presenters? I'll start off just with the land use question and that clause in the scheme, which is about the 30 minutes.
30 minute.
This proposal is inside the town boundary.
Correct.
So your argument is that that clause doesn't apply because it's within the boundary, whereas the clause talks about outside the boundary.
It's outside, yeah.
Okay, so I just want to make that clear. Yes.
Thank you. Could I just go over again? Last time we saw the application, we were again concerned about the retail use in the rural zone. The zone is the same. However, there is now a convenience store, which would appear from your description and material you've submitted to be somewhat of a private facility, if I'm reading it correctly. Could you just describe how you preclude public access to that and thereby effectively turning it back into retail provision? How does it retain access only to those residents?
Yeah. So at the time of check-in for the tourist development guests, they'll be provided with an access card, and that access card will give them access to what is called the convenience store and the end-of-trip facilities, and they'll be the only amenities to which the guests staying at the tourist development building will be provided complimentary to. Otherwise, the remaining of the facilities will be available to workers, and again, they will have a separate access card which gives them entry into those areas.
Right. So in your view, that would fall into associated incidental facilities, catering, etc., under the definitions.
So under tourist development, on-site facilities can be provided as part of that use, and so that is something that will be provided. So if they do need to grab something, for the workers in particular, it'll be grab something, get on the bus and go to the work site, a quick coffee or something like that.
Okay. And who are you anticipating would be using those 24 rooms for tourist accommodation as such?
Available to the public. There'll be a separate online booking system so that anyone from the public can access those rooms.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further from me.
Further questions?
Yeah, okay. And this is probably one for Andrew. So I'm curious, the construction methodology, are we looking at tilt-up formed off-site and then assembled on-site? Or?
No, it's actually a modular construction, so it'll be for want of a better word, a box construction building. But the way that we've, I suppose, adapted the facade of the building as a modular construction. So rather than typically most modular buildings go across the corridor, so room, corridor, room. This particular one, we actually go 3 rooms in a row. So it's less joining, less complexity with it. And then we have an open corridor right through the middle with fresh air and what have you, and cross ventilation into every room. So it's a new layout for it, but it's a modular build.
Okay, so in the planning report that we got through the R13 outlines that the development has been designed and located to support a future adaptable use of the development. Given the construction methodology, what do you think the life would be of a building like the one proposed?
I'm not exactly sure what the lifetime, but usually it's 30, 40 years, I would have thought, with a building. In the cases of this, because it is modular, it's just literally a case of undoing and taking away and repurposing as we need, which we have looked at.
And then just condition 13 and the old bugbear of social infrastructure contributions. So you're comfortable with that condition now?
The applicant has always voluntarily indicated that he will provide that on a voluntary basis. Yeah. We understand that there is no DCP, but it is prepared to provide a contribution to the town as part of contributing to the community.
Thank you. Further questions? Commissioners, any questions?
Yes, through the chair, Mr. Just back to the one about the 30-minute drive in the rural area from the town boundary. These sort of policies, in my experience anyway, are introduced in the town planning schemes to ensure or to encourage this type of development within the town planning scheme. So I'd just like a comment perhaps from Mr. Hightower in regards to, would this be a better situation 30 minutes out, or within the town boundary as it is proposed.
We'll go, but you're asking Owen Hightower this, are you?
Yes, just
Okay.
his opinion, if I could.
We'll go back to Owen.
Yeah, thanks. Look, plainly to me, the intent of these types of provisions, Commissioner, is to ensure these facilities are integrated into the community. To me, and having lived in Port Hedland for well over 8 years and still living in the Pilbara now for a substantial part of my life, and having dealt with workforce accommodation for over 15 years, this site location fundamentally doesn't achieve those integration goals. And there is plenty of land available that is proven to be serviced, isn't flood prone, and available in the South Hedland Town Centre or planned urban expansion of the Western Edge to accommodate a development like this. The location of this site, it's fenced off from the facilities adjoining it. It's a 2.3 kilometre walk back to the town centre. The report from the Sustainable Design Report actually says the site isn't in a walkable catchment. So the concept that this site achieves those integration goals, to me, is really tenuous. And in my last submission, I said, if you put this project on the other side of South Hedland, it would be an equivalent 2.3 kilometre walk to the town centre. So in the context of South Hedland, this is not an integration outcome. The rule exists, and the scheme, to me, I think it's interesting, this nuanced interpretation everyone's saying doesn't really provide this basis to say it's inside or outside, and that's how the definition should be interpreted. And I don't see any legal advice suggesting previous indications from McLeod's or to the DAP or others have enabled this alternative interpretation to develop. But I mean, if you take it as read, and as McLeod's advice goes to in the original determination, reading the provision as read, plainly, it is not to support workforce accommodation in the rural zone that is within a 30-minute drive of the town centre boundary. And this site clearly is.
Yeah, I think we've got the message there. I think that we will give the applicant a chance just to respond to that question from Commissioner Jurovich.
So just on the McLeod's advice, that McLeod's advice did not actually consider whether or not this location was within the town site boundary. So I think it's not correct to suggest that that's how that advice should be interpreted in the first instance. In relation to its location, it is within the town site boundary, but 2.3 kilometres from the town centre. Well, there's about 60 bays that will be provided and bikes available for people who are staying at this village to be able to access the town centre and the shops. And so we do think that it is an appropriate location. It is within close proximity to the urban area, and the policies make it very clear that the town encourages these types of developments to be located within the town site boundary.
Further questions of the applicant?
Not from me, thanks.
Sorry, Commissioner Shaw, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to understand the situation with regard to water supply, because obviously it's something that Mr. Hightower raised in his submission, but it is actually addressed in the agenda papers. But there has been a little bit of local controversy around it. So could someone just talk me through the water supply requirements for the site, please, and what the DWER and Water Corp's position is?
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw, I appreciate your question. Basically, we have engaged with Water Corp on this matter. There is a supply within the area which we need to tap on. We understand the water supply will require additional pressure to be provided. There is sufficient amount of during our consultation, it was indicated that it's a sufficient amount of water for our operations, and we just need to also not only provide with the pressure storage tank at the facility, which we have allowed for that to occur. We also have allowed for the treatment facility as well for the water quality to be kept at it's a good standard as well in accordance with the guidelines. There is, of course, there will be requirements for construction water as well that we have considered in our construction process as well. So we are very aware of the potential that this could create issues. We have also indicated by Water Corp that the pipe where we have to actually tap into has asbestos. It's an all asbestos pipeline as well, which we have been, kindly told about it, which is fantastic. So we can actually provide provisions for that while we are doing this particular work to tap on that pipeline.
So there's sufficient water. So Water Corporation have said there's sufficient water available to support a 1,350 odd site. Yes. Okay, now stormwater, that seemed to have been something that was overlooked in the first iteration of this application. Could you talk me through how stormwater now is being addressed at the site?
The stormwater, there's a plan in the planning report that was provided, which has further detail on how stormwater will be stored, maintained, and slowly sipped through storage tanks placed within the site. So stormwater will be collected, will be stored, will be also utilised for watering purposes as well within the site to reduce the amount of water utilised for those particular watering of landscaping that we are providing. But as well, if there is an excess water that will sit on those tanks, there's a natural seepage provision within those tanks to also provide back into the natural groundwater issues, creating a better sustainable outcome long term.
Okay. Now, to Mr. Hightower's issue about evacuation in the event of a storm, could you talk me through what the plan is at this site, and if there are differences between what the town of Port Hedland requires and what this facility has proposed? Could you explain that to me in a little more detail, please?
I don't think there's any differences. One of the things that we do at disaster monitoring in other facilities similar to this is monitor. Of course, Port of Hedland has a good monitoring system for disasters and a good alert system as well. So through that, we'll be continue monitoring that all the time. One of the things that was raised was that it could create a negative impact during disaster events. That's considerable. Sometimes with cyclones and disasters like this could create a considerable impact to the town. We do have a nurse, as I said, and a nurse/paramedic on site plus first aiders. We'll look after our people first, of course, so we can actually triage any issues that were created during the disaster, and then deployed our personnel back to the community to help with those assistance if there is assistance required. We will also have areas that will be designated for refuge if we cannot evacuate everyone in a timely manner. The main aim will be to evacuate people ahead of the disaster commencing, so we can actually prevent any injuries to those workers that are staying in our facilities or tourists as well. So, yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that's okay. No, please.
So does your facility comply with the town of Port Hedland's evacuation requirements?
Yes, it does.
So why would Mr. Hightower say that it doesn't?
Not sure. Not quite sure. I can't answer that question.
I'm happy to provide a response to that.
I doubt, no, not just the moment. We're just getting responses from the applicant at the moment.
Okay, so you say that it does comply with the town's policies.
Yes.
Okay.
Further questions?
Unless Commissioner Jurovic has any other questions, I just have a quick question with regard to the staging and delivery of the project. So you referred to a shortage in by 2028. Is the timetable for delivery of this project such that you anticipate being able to meet that shortage by 2028? Or will you have assets built on site, assuming everything goes according to plan?
Assuming everything goes according to plan and we can actually proceed in a timely manner, yes.
So by 2028, you'll have 1,300 beds built.
So, I mean, we will obviously need to ensure that tenure is arranged. So,
of course, yeah.
And also, there will also need to be some commercial agreements entered into. But there is I think we allowed for a 3-year construction period.
Okay, so the commercial agreements that you refer to being entered into, is that for construction of the site, or is that for offtake of the beds themselves?
Lease agreement. Yeah, lease agreement, as
Okay,
well as the commercial accounts. Yeah.
So sorry, could you just a little more, when you just say commercial arrangements, everything that's ever built requires commercial arrangements.
Yes.
Are you referring to offtake for bed capacity at the site when you talk about commercial arrangements? You are. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so through the papers themselves, talks about the impact on broader housing availability in South Hedland, and that this project would relieve that. There were some general statements made. Is there anything more specific you can point to with regard to that, or have you done any further work to verify that?
So there was an economic demand study that was prepared last year, and so that went through housing supply, forecasted, projects in the region and the amount of accommodation rooms that would be required, which identified the shortfall. And it's on that basis that a significant development is being proposed by the applicant in South Hedland to enable to provide that accommodation, the much needed accommodation for workers.
So your position is that by developing this facility specifically for worker accommodation, that would relieve and improve the availability of general housing in the South Hedland area?
We expect that it would, yes.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Just one further question, sorry. The position with regard to the DRP chair as opposed to the DRP itself being in support of this proposal, could someone speak to that, please?
So the proposal's been to the full DRP on 2 occasions. The proposal was then revised, and in consultation with the town, it was considered appropriate for the chair then to review the revised proposal. So it absolutely meets the requirements of the policy. The original review by the full panel obviously had some recommendations that were taken aboard, and the chair considered that they were all then acceptable and provided his full support for this proposal.
Okay, thank you. No further questions from me.
Thank you very much. Any further questions of the applicant? No. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. We'll move to the officers. Where are they? Oh, they're there. So we've got Casimir and Chaz, is it? Yes.
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes. Can do. Is there anything you wanted to say to start with, or brief us on to start with, or just take the questions?
I just wanted to make a couple of points to start with. Firstly, the RAR report, because it was prepared as part of a SAT review process, was prepared by an independent planning consultant. There are a couple of administrative things that I've picked up this morning in the report. Firstly, page 1, the responsible authority recommendation, I think it's meant to say approve on the 3rd line of the 2nd paragraph before the words accompanying plans. It doesn't say the word approve in there. I think it's meant to. On page 18, the public consultation section, it doesn't mention that the application was referred to Water Corporation back in 2024. It was referred to Water Corporation, and no comments or submissions were received. It was deemed acceptable by the Water Corporation at that time. And just a comment in relation to the DRP, the objective of the town's DRP policy is to facilitate an improvement in the design quality of proposals and built form outcomes in the town of Port Hedland. And the attachment 12, the DRP report, indicates all green lights against the 10 Design WA principles. And the chairperson undertook the review as a matter of efficiency as part of the SAT process, which was requested by the department's officers involved in the SAT mediation.
Thank you. Questions of the officers from panel members? Member Page.
So at our previous meeting, there were, you'll recall, a few significant matters that we needed information on. And I recall the intent at that stage was to require some subsidiary plans and address some of those fundamental issues through a future operational management plan. We didn't agree with that. We felt that we needed that information before we could make a considered decision on the proposal, and we encouraged a draft operational management plan and all that it should ordinarily entail to be prepared and submitted to the Shire's satisfaction before these came back to a DAP meeting. Have you discussed or have you viewed the draft operational management plan? And if not, are you comfortable that some of those key outstanding issues that were originally proposed to be dealt with through the operational management plan have been removed and dealt with separately to your satisfaction?
Yes, so an operational management plan, I guess it was provided to a degree in a cover letter as part of the mediation process, which provided clarification to those matters raised at the previous meeting, particularly around land use permissibility and public access. Condition 19 does propose an operational management plan is required, which includes items A through to K. And one of which is subsection G, a cyclone emergency management plan. So just to comment on that point as well, the town's workforce accommodation policy requires an importance level 4 cyclone shelter to be built with a workforce accommodation facility, and where that is not provided, they are to provide a cyclone management plan, which the town's position on that will be, if that importance level 4 building isn't provided, that if there is a cyclone threat, then all occupiers of the facility shall be flown out of town for the event, so that the occupiers don't place a pressure or a stress on the town's 2 community emergency cyclone shelters.
Okay. Thank you. Just in terms of a couple of your conditions. So condition 1 talks about a validity period of 5 years. That's a bit unusual. It's usually 4. Why are you specifically recommending 5?
This was at the request of the applicant to allow additional time to negotiate those commercial agreements if required.
Thank you. So time to deal with the lease and so on, if that, all right, thank you. And then your condition 5 deals with public art, and it states that the applicant should choose between providing public art on site or choosing a cash in lieu payment. When would they need, there's no timelines in that condition. So if they were going to go with option 1, a public art plan, when would they need to provide that plan to you? And if they decided to go with option 2, advise you in writing that they're going to go cash in lieu, when would you need that done by?
So immediately before condition 5, there's some bold text, which indicates that the grouping of conditions below that must be cleared prior to lodgement of a building permit application.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Great. Thank you.
Further questions? Yes.
Thank you.
Hyde.
Just in terms, continuing from Member Page's questioning around some of the conditions and following on from earlier questions to the applicant, you will recall again that when last we met, we questioned the head of power for the town to impose social infrastructure contributions. And the question remains the same for condition 13, albeit that I suspect there is a difference between 13A and 13B. So my question to you is in 2 parts. Is 13A something that is necessarily required for safety, emergency access, etc.? a clear need and nexus with this application and those requirements? And is 13B somewhat different and something that has been derived from a voluntary offer on behalf of the applicant? And if that is the case, what is the validity of condition 13 Part B 1 and 2 in terms of the head of power to impose that and administer that by the town?
Thank you for the question. So condition 13A, it probably could have been mentioned outside of being a social contribution, because it is in fact an emergency access infrastructure contribution. So that that road network to the north and immediately to the north and northwest of the site is a requirement for bushfire escape access. So that is why it is proposed to be unsealed. It's not required to be a sealed road. It would be expected that the proponent constructs road signage and drainage and landscaping with that road to convey stormwater away from the site. Yeah, you've rightly pointed out, but I guess the reason why we've grouped that in condition 13 is so that it can be dealt with as part of one agreement with the proponent under point A and point B regarding the terms of construction of that. In terms of condition 13B, the town of Port Hedland, in our local planning scheme, we have a supplemental provision in our scheme, in addition to the deemed provisions and the regulations, which highlight the localised consideration of social impact from workforce accommodation proposals. So we have 2 local planning policies, one on workforce accommodation and one on social impact assessment. The town social impact assessment local planning policy, it talks about leveraging infrastructure contributions from workforce accommodation proposals consistent with the principles outlined in the SPP on developer contributions. Because growth in Port Hedland is not of a linear nature, similar to, say, Perth metropolitan growth, where it is reasonably easy to forecast when stages of subdivision, etc., can provide those contributions to community facilities. Here, because we're in a cyclical environment and the economy goes through phases, it is very difficult for the local government to forecast when and where growth will occur, particularly for workforce accommodation, which caters for the construction cycle. So we don't have a DCP in place. However, there are a number of other facilities in the local government area that have been presented to this panel that have provided contributions. The town has discussed this contribution with the proponent through the process, and the proponent has agreed to provide that contribution. In terms of spending the money, it is basically held in a liabilities account by the town. The town is subject to financial auditing by external auditors, and typically we would discuss the projects which the town would allocate the funding towards with the proponent using those need and nexus principles outlined in SPP 3.6. So because this site is adjacent to quite a large sporting precinct master plan, we would anticipate that the appropriate expenditure of that contribution would be towards community facilities within that master plan area, which is immediately adjacent to the site, and occupiers would receive reciprocal benefit from that investment by being able to utilise those public open spaces, which would then in turn benefit their mental health and well-being, which is necessary, I guess, due to long shift patterns and I guess the need to recreate, which in turn increases mental health outcomes.
Thank you for that answer. I do understand the the principles at play here. But I'm just wondering how you have derived a 2.5 million per 10-year period when the works that money is to contribute to have yet to be set within the town's forward infrastructure plan.
So what we did is we utilised the precedent contributions, and we created a per room per year rate for each bed, and then we multiplied that by the number of beds. I don't have the figures in front of me, but we've utilised a precedent provided by several other facilities, and we have calculated the rate per year, and we've discussed it at length with the applicant.
Okay.
Further questions? All right. Commissioners, do you have questions of the officers?
Mr. Chair, no, that I just do remember reading from one of the presenters' presentation for the proposal that they acknowledge that it's a voluntary contribution that they're talking about here.
Okay, thank you. I've got a question in relation to the agreement. What's the latest on tenure? And the follow-up question is, should this approval, if it's to be approved, be subject to the execution of that agreement?
You potentially could apply a condition relating to tenure. In terms of the application, it was signed by a delegate of the state of Western Australia, because the application is located on Crown land, so it has been signed by the state to be considered by the panel. In terms of the status of the tenure, there still needs to be a council decision on the sublease agreement, and the head lease agreement is currently being reviewed by the state.
So you're suggesting that perhaps there could be a condition which links it back to the agreement being executed?
There could be, but I wouldn't deem it necessary, because the proponent wouldn't be able to act on the approval if they didn't have tenure for the land.
Okay, thank you. All right. No further questions of the officers. Thank you, gentlemen, for that.
Sorry, I do have a question. Sorry. Thank you through the chair. Just so I'm crystal clear, because obviously community safety and any flow and consequences onto the town are material considerations. Am I correct in understanding that in the event of extreme weather events, so such as cyclones, you've got sufficient, the assumption that this project's based on is that you've got sufficient notice that these things are going to happen, that you move workers out and you fly them out basically, and therefore when something does go down, it is not anticipated that there would be any unusual overburden on the town of Port Hedland's facilities located for residents. Is that the premise underlying this project?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no further questions. We'll move on to the item. We have a recommendation for approval with conditions and advice notes. I'm seeking a mover and a seconder for the published recommendation. Is there a mover?
I'm happy to move.
Commissioner Jurovich, is there a seconder for that? Yes, Member Page. Thank you. Commissioner Jurovich?
No. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chair. That would be moved with that slight adjustment to section 10 that was mentioned in the presentation, if I do remember right.
It's the word guidelines.
I think that was the request from the applicant.
I think what we can do is leave it you moving the published one, and we'll look for amendments.
Okay.
So
no worries.
You, as mover, you're able to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think this is a a worthwhile project for the town of Port Hedland. It will meet a need. Obviously, coming from Kalgoorlie being a mining town, I see these sort of issues all the time. And that's why I emphasise the 30-minute drive situation, because same as here, we want the projects built in town at a suitable location, and I believe this is so. That will provide a boost to the economy of Port Hedland, and certainly given all the activity in the mining industry up that way, it's much needed. So I fully support that, the recommendation of the officers.
Thank you. Move to Member Page as the seconder.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. So, look, I think previously this came to the panel before, I wasn't comfortable approving it at that point. There just wasn't enough detail at that previous stage to support a considered decision to approve, and there were just too many questions that needed to be answered at that point. But I guess also, and in that time, I felt that the design or the feedback from the design review panel wasn't supportive. It wasn't wishy-washy, it was clearly non-supportive for me. And the panel highlighted the inadequacy of the information presented at that point and raised quite a few shortcomings with the design. But I do acknowledge the work that's been done over the last 10 months to fill in those information gaps, and to redesign aspects of the proposal and to address technical concerns with the town's offices, specifically about stormwater design. So I'm now happy to support the proposal as recommended. I think it'll provide much needed housing and tourist accommodation close to other similar land uses. And I think from my point of view, it is near enough the town centre and sports and other facilities which will promote social integration of workers with the local community. I'm also satisfied from the information provided in the applicant's planning report that we got in response to the R13 request, and the technical reports attached to the RA, that the proposal aligns with the policy objectives of state planning policy 2.5 rural planning, clause 67 of the Dean provisions, the town's position statement on workforce accommodation, and their policy on workforce accommodation. So the town's design review panel is now supportive of the proposal, and just for clarification from my position, it is very common for a final review of a proposal to be done by a chair of the panel and not necessarily having to reconvene the whole panel. So any concerns raised by submitters in that regard, it is very common. And I think that we've now confirmed alignment with the 10 design principles of state planning policy 7.0. And if we're wanting to take a crack at the design, I guess the design, if it was located in a centre in the metropolitan area, there may be some more articulation deficiencies that could be addressed. But I think it has very clearly been stated by both the panel, and it's evident from the documentation that the architectural treatment is of a far higher standard than typically proposed for uses like this in the regions. And some of the minor improvements as suggested by the panel will be addressed via recommended conditions of approval. So I'm satisfied that in terms of its context and for its purpose, the design of the proposal meets the principles of SPP 7 and is satisfactory. I would like to propose a formal amendment as raised by the applicant, and Member Yurich raised it to amend condition 10N to delete the wording in brackets that reads subject to due satisfaction, simply because it's not appropriate for clearance of a condition to be a third to the satisfaction of a third Second.
Seconded by Member Hyde. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Put the amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. It's still with you.
Nothing further to add to the substantive things.
Okay. Further speakers? Yes, Member Hyde.
Thank you, presiding member. I too share Member Page's considerations that this has been much improved since we last viewed the application, and a number of the concerns that we had have been well responded to make this development now, I believe, capable of approval and subject to the application of discretion as identified. The key changes, I think, adequately respond to issues such as design, accommodation, typology, the land uses in the rural zone, and the further technical studies and ongoing discussions that have occurred, obviously, in the intervening time between the technical officers at the town and also the consultants the applicant has. Inevitably, some detail remains to be finalised, and that's acceptable, and this can be done through conditions of approval. I'm satisfied that we no longer have ex-uses in rural zones, given that I regard the convenience store, such as it is, essentially to be a private facility, and I'm comfortable that through the operational management processes and the location of that facility, that it doesn't effectively become defined as a retail use. I think it's been important to go through that process to determine the right methodologies for construction and operational management, and equally for stormwater management, which is very important in this area, and if not well handled, can be quite catastrophic. So I welcome the detail that is set out in the conditions associated with those aspects. So I think on balance, while it is a relatively large and somewhat self-contained development within the edge of the town centre, the accommodation, I'm comfortable, having previously read that demand study, will provide for that demand, and should therefore be, I'm happy to support an approval. However, presiding member, there are a couple of amendments that I would like to propose. The one is quite straightforward, as identified by the town itself, and that is to insert the word approve in the preamble, where I think we have set aside the decision and substitute a new decision for DAP application reference, and insert the word approve accompanying plans. I think that's the right place for that.
And approve accompanying plans. All right. Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Yes, member Page. Thank you. Any discussion on that? I'll put that amendment all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Law still with you.
My second proposed amendment is a little more complicated, and that is to look at condition 13, which at the moment is headed social/infrastructure contribution. If I just break down the amendment that I propose, to edit, first of all, the underlying social/infrastructure contribution, and rephrase that emergency access. Within the sentence associated with the number 13, to delete the word social and the /. So that sentence would read, addressing the following infrastructure requirements. To maintain A as it is, so that completes 13. The next part of my amendment would be to remove B from that condition and to formulate a new advice note, which would encapsulate some of those words. In other words, the applicant is encouraged to enter into agreement with the town of Port Hedland prepared by the town solicitors at the applicant's cost, addressing the following social infrastructure requirements, and then delete the words prior to occupation of development, etc., and simply have 1 and 2 associated with that agreement. I'm sorry, that's quite complicated.
Yes. I think we'll just ask you to repeat what you are proposing there. So
Yes.
I understand 13A.
Okay.
The heading's emergency access.
Yes.
And taking out the word social
Yes.
and the forward slash.
Yes. And then A remaining as it is.
A remaining as it is.
For B, to take the bulk of that text to an advice note, but also to take some words from the introduction of condition 13. So the advice note would read, the applicant is encouraged to enter into an agreement with the town of Port Hedland, prepared by the town solicitors at the applicant's cost, addressing the following social infrastructure, addressing social infrastructure requirements, and then simply to have Roman numeral 1 and 2 associated with that.
Okay. I'm seeking a seconder for that. Member Page, thank you. What I'm proposing we'll do, I think we'll deal with 13A first.
Okay.
I think that's a lot simpler. So we'll deal that as the first amendment, or this amendment. So amendment 13A is
to
the heading and the taking out the word social and the slash.
Correct.
And we have a seconder for that. So is there any discussion on that amendment?
Yep.
Yes. Could I just could we just, because obviously this is literally my first rodeo, so I'm just trying to understand what the effect is that you're trying to achieve with the amendment. So is essentially the intent of the First Amendment to make it to refer just generally to infrastructure and to just remove a reference to social infrastructure? So
that is correct, yes. And also because I can clearly see, and as responded to my question by the town, that there is a clear need and nexus and purpose to that condition, and it has been raised through referrals, etc., as well, to provide that emergency access, and it is a piece of infrastructure. Yeah.
Is it possible at all to put up on the screen what the effect of the amendments will be, and both taken separately and cumulatively?
I'm taking the first bit. Sorry,
all right. So okay.
First, and I'll deal with the second amendment.
Okay, I'd like to see it in its full written form, if that's possible. Because I just
Yes. No, we'll just, the Secretariat here will try and get that on the screen. We just need to log into something. Separate computer.
Sorry. Do you want me to speak to the second part at this point or not?
Let's just stick to, if you wouldn't mind, if we could just stick to 13A. I'd like to like I said, I'd just like to step through it carefully, because I'm conscious that if we're doing, I'd like to step through it quite consciously, particularly if what we're doing is changing something from an absolute requirement to enter into something, which I understand is the second part, to a recommendation that you might like to think about it. That's quite a substantial change. So I'd like to step through First Amendment and Second Amendment and understand what the effect of both is. So if we can just deal with them separately, that would be great.
So
that would be emergency access. Yeah. And then if you go down and take out social and / to keep infrastructure.
Infrastructure in.
Oh, sorry.
Just take the social and / out. That's it.
So that's 13A.
doesn't relate to B at all.
No.
And I'm happy to talk a second if you.
So
I'll just highlight what's the changes are, just so it's clear. Can you see that, Commissioner?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So I'm proposing that we deal with that first, separate to 13B, and we'll come back to 13B and put all the changes in and have a mover and a second to full second part. So is there any further discussion on 13A? Yes.
I will talk to it briefly as seconder. So I'm comfortable to support 13A because as responded to by the town, strictly speaking, it doesn't fit under the heading social infrastructure. It is essential infrastructure to deal with emergency management. And I think there is a demonstrated need nexus for that. It's not necessarily needed to be linked to an underlying DCP or other document. It's demonstrated it's necessary for emergency management. I think by restructuring 13A in that way doesn't change the intent or effect of 13A. It's just stripping it out and cementing it as its own individual condition. So I'm happy to support it on that basis.
Okay, further speakers on that amendment?
Could I just see it again, please, on the screen? Okay, thank you.
All right. So did you want to end the debate on that?
No, happy to leave
Okay,
it.
so I'll put that amendment. All in favour? Against? Which way are you voting, Commissioner?
Oh, sorry, I support it. Sorry. Yep, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's carried. We'll move to 13B and we'll get that up on the screen for you.
I'm just checking. I don't think their advice notes have got headings.
So that's
Take that whole B out.
so that would come out and become an advice note.
That would be edited.
Yes.
So
What number? Just a new one at the bottom?
just a new one. Yeah. Oh, is there an order to them at the bottom?
Okay.
It's just a new one.
All right.
So my proposal to amend this for the purpose of an advice note would be to state the applicant is encouraged to enter into an agreement with the town of Hedland addressing social infrastructure requirements. Infrastructure requirements. I would then propose to, if you're doing edits, to strike through prior to occupation. And that paragraph and the contribution shall be, and just keep numeral 1 and 2. But if there isn't a second for that, happy to have that massage.
Correct.
So let me have a little look.
Take out that bit too.
Yes.
That bit as well.
It's all of that down to so prior, that's it.
Leave in the,
And then leaving the 1 and the 2.
all right. So that's what you're proposing.
Highlight, that's what it would read.
Okay. All right. Is there a seconder for that?
Second.
Member Page, thank you. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, I will. my concern about the inclusion of the full extent of 13B is that there is no specific head of power other than an additional clause within the deemed provisions or supplementary to the deemed provisions within the scheme. The town has not prepared a forward infrastructure works program that has been fully costed, advertised, etc., as would normally be the case, from which could be a transparent process that would calculate contributions that applicants might make to social infrastructure. Equally, the social impact work that has been done at the moment is fairly high level and still to be formulated in some detail. And so I find it a bit of a stretch at this point to have a statutory condition of approval which requires a contribution for the value of 2.5 million over a 10-year period for social infrastructure associated with this development. I have absolute acceptance of the principle that developments of this scale in regional towns of this nature have an impact on social infrastructure, and that there should be some contribution. And I welcome the fact that the applicant is keen to volunteer that contribution, and it may be in the order of the numbers that are proposed in the current 13B. But I am conscious as a planner that there needs to be clarity around need and nexus and a head of power for that. And I don't find at the moment that there is that rigour behind the condition as worded. So in moving it to an advice note, I feel that that encouragement is there. It's clearly identified as something which both parties can work towards. And that's quite acceptable in the form of an advice note.
Thank you. Member Page, a seconder.
Yes, I echo the sentiment of Member Hyde, and so I'm not going to duplicate what she said. What I will add to that is it's important that we make this decision based on planning merit. That's our role as this panel. And although the need or the desire for that contribution is clear and has been agreed to by the applicant, and it will be documented as part of the advice note. And although the advice note is not a statutory condition, it indicates the goodwill that the applicant has communicated as part of this recorded meeting for future prosperity, I guess. This is, when we make a decision like this as a planning panel which makes decisions across the state, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we are making decisions that could be challenged informally when we're making decisions in other areas. So this panel regularly deals with regional proposals where the local authority would like a contribution. There isn't any planning mechanism underpinning it, and we fairly consistently take the approach that it's a bit difficult from a planning point of view to compel that contribution. So I just think it is clear in this meeting that the applicant is indicating commitment, informal commitment to do what the town has asked. And I hope that runs smoothly, condition or no condition. I'm just not comfortable, as Member Hyde said, to put a statutory condition as a planning determining authority on an approval that doesn't have a planning basis, because it has wider repercussions than just this approval or the town of Port Hedland. So I'm happy to second that.
Is there a speaker against?
Point of information, if I could, presiding member. Can I ask if this condition is ultra vires, that we cannot consider it in the aspect that it is recommended here?
That's a question that, well,
Look, as seconder, I can't comment on whether it's ultra vires, but it's not reasonable from a planning point of view, in my view, to place a condition like this requiring a significant financial commitment when there's nothing under, there's no document or work that's been done that gives rise to the condition as it's currently worded. So I can't comment on whether it's ultra vires. I just don't think it has a solid planning basis. It's not a reasonable condition.
further speakers?
Well, I would speak.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron. Carry on.
No, you carry on. That's all right.
I was going to ask the question, if that is the case, just as a point of clarification, how did this item make its way into the conditions in the first place?
Oh, look, Commissioner, I think that we've seen this in a lot of regional towns where quite clearly there is pressure on infrastructure because of the fly-in, fly-out nature of the workforce, and towns are struggling to provide the infrastructure once you get that influx of people. But what they've not done is to put in the planning basis for it. Now, how it finds its way in here, I think there is pressure on, not pressure on officers, but pressure on towns to try and include this in some way. It's not unusual for us to see these sorts of conditions in similar applications. And we've responded, as far as I know, I've responded the same way each time. Further speakers for the amendment?
What for?
Jurevich?
Speaker against?
Okay, yes.
Yep. Yeah, just to underline what the presiding member said, you're spot on with all the pressures that these types of developments have on the infrastructure, etc., of the town sites. Look, the way I look at this, it's been discussed, it's been agreed to as a voluntary contribution, and I don't see it corrupting the recommendation or the resolution of the DAP if it's included. So I would rather see it in the context that I moved the original motion with that. The other amendments I don't have a problem with.
Okay, thank you. Further speakers, Commissioner?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm also speaking against. I would note that the proponent has agreed to make a commitment. The town has outlined its reasons for requiring that. I think that a contribution to social infrastructure is reasonable given the scale of this development. It is going to be a very significant one, and it will be located next to the Shish, which is an incredible community asset. And during the discussions, it was noted that it would be highly likely that it would be part of the Shish development process. The town officers also noted that they had developed a methodology of calculating of how they reached that $2.5 million figure. So I'm inclined to support Commissioner Jurevich's original motion. FIFO developments have significant impacts, and the council officers did note that it is difficult in mining communities to predict the rate of development, and it can be lumpy. And I think that the proposed original proposal was reasonable in those circumstances.
Look, I'm supporting the amendment. I understand completely where the town is coming from. Those pressures are very evident. However, we're here to make a planning decision, and we'd have to make sure there is a planning basis, proper planning basis for making those decisions. And at the present time, I don't believe that is there. So I'm going to support the amendment. So back to the mover to wind up the debate on the amendment.
Thank you. I've listened to the speakers against the amendment motion, and you know, I agree that there are always impacts, and there is pressure to provide things above and beyond. And I think that it is good that the applicant and the town are well on the way to, if you like, formulating the agreement, which is highlighted. But I go back to the point that at the moment there is not a sound planning framework to require this numerical amount based on information that the town has prepared, which has been advertised, which has gone through due process. So I believe that it is, as the commissioners say, it's a voluntary process, and it should go through that voluntary and informal process correctly through an advice note rather than a statutory condition imposing a level of contribution.
Thank you. That closes debate on the amendment. I'll now put the amendment. All in favour? Against? That's carried 3-2. Thank you. The floor is still with you. Okay. Further speakers? Commissioner Shaw, did you want to speak to the substantive motion?
Well, only to say that as amended, I don't approve it. I support the original amendment. The original motion is moved by Commissioner Jurovic.
Okay, all right. I support the motion to approve the application. It's been through quite a process over many months, and the result is I think we have a much better proposal than we started with probably nearly a year ago now. The design review panel has looked at it. The chair has agreed to it. It may not be a building that I would give a huge tick for in terms of design. However, it does satisfy many of the requirements for the design and with the landscaping and fencing and the other elements that have been reconsidered. I note also that water management, stormwater management and other aspects have been looked at, and there are supporting reports to satisfy those requirements. The demand also is clear from the commentary and the documentation that we've managed to see. So I'm more than supportive of the proposal. So I'll go back to the original mover to wind up debate, and that's Commissioner Jurovic.
Thank you, presiding member. While it's a funny situation where you're in speaking against your own original motion, but I do acknowledge that it is in reasonable debate that we have these discussions. Okay, don't agree with 13B adjustment. However, I still will support the complete motion with that adjustment, surely just on the basis that it gets this project over the line and working. So that's my closure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That ends the debate on the substantive motion. I'll now put that as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Just to wind up the meeting, in part C, there are a number of SAT matters listed there, and I will close the meeting at 11:04. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance, and thank you to the Secretariat.
Thank you.